I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Andrew Goodwyn. Professor Goodwyn is a strong supporter of teacher education and heads the Institute of Education at the University of Reading. He's an expert on first language education and teaching, and he's taught in schools for 15 years before joining the university to lead teacher education programs. Today, he's going to talk to us about how we can all become inspirational leaders in the classroom. Please welcome Professor Andrew Goodwyn.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you to Beaconhouse for inviting me to this splendid conference. I've had the pleasure of running a couple of workshops and met some fantastic teachers already. And thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to engaging for half an hour or so in talking about inspirational teachers. Now, I'm going to say a couple of things to start with that might be considered counterintuitive or even paradoxical. So the first one is that inspiration is simply not enough. And the second is, I'm very pleased to be speaking, as it were, on behalf of teachers in what is the last plenary session of this conference. The paradox is this. We love teaching our students. We want them to have a really happy time in school. And then we want them to leave and go out in the world and have a happy time, don't we? We actually need them to go, so more students come. So the whole point of teaching the students is, as part of the process, as the metaphor of this conference, the journey towards a happy adult life. Do we want the teachers to go? Well, no, we don't. We want the teachers to stay. What we're looking at is getting that balance right between the importance of our students and their outcomes and the importance of our teachers, their well-being and their sense of success. Okay, let's see if I know how to work this. Good. So, I'm going to talk about inspirational teachers, but in a particular way, you'll see what I mean by that. I'm going to talk about a recent influential report, the McKinsey report. I'm going to talk about the characteristics of expert teachers. I'm going to talk about a particular dimension of expert teaching in the UK called the advanced skills teacher. I'm going to talk a little bit about some research we've done about how that workforce is doing, what difference it's making. To talk a bit about what's happening around the world in terms of expert teacher identification. And I'm going to talk a bit about the future and perhaps what Beaconhouse might like to think about in finding ways to address the need to recognise the status and long-term importance of the very best inspiring teachers. So, maybe that term inspiration is occasionally used to keep us as passionate amateurs. Do you say lawyers are inspired? Doctors are inspired? Or do you say lawyers are expensive? Doctors need the best equipment? I think sometimes the term inspiration in teachers is a little bit used as if that's all you need. And we all know it's much more complex than that. So, let's suppose you have a very good inspirational teacher. There are many, many, I'm sure, in the hall now. What about the other teachers? How can they learn to be inspiring unless they get access to those teachers to see what inspiration means on a daily basis? And can you simply learn to be inspired by yourself? Or do you need other colleagues to help you learn what that means in real terms? And where does inspiration come from? Over 40 years. Last night, it was a real pleasure to see people receiving their long service awards. So that's a fantastic achievement that they've kept going with that resilience and that enthusiasm all that time. But actually in many countries, maybe not Pakistan, but in many countries, teachers do not stay in the profession necessarily very long because it wears them out and they need more support. And what keeps a teacher improving? And I was very interested in my previous colleagues' discussion about school improvement. School improvement is one method towards helping teachers improve. But there wasn't very much there about individual teacher improvement. I mean, there may well be implied, but I think it needs to be made much more explicit for the future of the teaching workforce. So, here are some questions for us. Can we recognise and reward the best teachers? Can we give them status and long-term development prospects? Can we simply retain them in the classroom getting better? And can they learn to inspire other teachers? And if they inspire other teachers, then surely far more students are inspired and can achieve greater outcomes. So here are some terms that don't use the word inspirational, but are becoming quite important around the world. Terms like highly effective or advanced skills, used in Australia and in England. Outstanding, this is what the school improvement model calls the best teachers in the UK. Excellent is another term used formally in England. Leading teacher, also in England. Highly accomplished teacher from the US. And master teacher, a term fairly common in the USA. Expert teacher, that's my favourite. Nowhere. No one wants to call you expert teachers. That in itself is quite an interesting conceptual issue, I think, about what do you call a very good teacher. Teachers don't like the term expert. I'm going to pause for about 5 seconds to let you look at that list and think, well, which one would you like to be? Highly accomplished, outstanding, effective, advanced skills? Well, this McKinsey report I mentioned was a study of the 10, as they saw it, best performing education systems in the world. Included a whole range of systems, including some from Asia, Europe, USA, and so on. And they came up with this absolutely categorical finding. The quality of an education system is only as good as its teachers. You're saying, no surprises there. The only way to improve outcomes is to improve instruction. That's to say, the quality of teaching in the classroom. Doesn't matter what you do about school improvement and test scores, it's about the best teaching. And high quality teaching should reach every child, which must be the aspiration of all systems, and I'm sure Beaconhouse puts it right at the top. I'm going to just quickly go through one example of the characterization of what very good teachers are like. What are the defining characteristics of the very best teachers? This is one study, but it's a collection of studies of over 5,000 over the last 10 years to make a kind of meta-analysis of what is the best kind of teaching. So those teachers, what are they like? They have a very deep understanding of teaching and learning. They have a very problem-solving approach. They're always trying to get it right, get it better. They're excellent decision makers. They know how to prioritize at all times. They have this wonderful thing called the optimal classroom learning environment. So all children feel safe, they feel included, they know what they're doing, they know it'll be exciting in that classroom. They know that the classroom is a multi-dimensional place. You know, it's about people with real bodies sitting there having to learn all day long. They think about those things as well as the intellectual environment. They know that teaching is actually about that particular class on that particular day. It's highly situated. They're very good at monitoring student progress and providing feedback. They're always testing their hypothesis. Is this lesson working? Is it really good? Here's a curious term. They are more automatic. Doesn't mean you're all robots. What it means is, because you're able to have lots of clever routines and ways of working, you've got lots of mental space to focus on individual children. They always show high respect for all their students all the time. They have that thing, we're talking about inspiration, they are passionate about teaching and learning. They're always passionate about it. And they're highly motivating. They make students feel they can organize themselves, they can do the work, and that they are building up their self-esteem. They always set the right kinds of tasks, whether it's a homework task, classroom task. They do make a difference to tests. I think one of the interesting themes of the conference has been our wish to get away from over-reliance on testing, but these people do make test scores work. They don't like them necessarily, but they make them work. And they always do both things. They're always keeping children busy on task and focused, but their focus is actually on deep learning. The learning we've talked about at the conference that takes more time. And the example I think that Richard gave this morning of the teacher who spent a whole week on empathy, that would be deep learning, and that's what we need. Now, I've got an awful lot of slides, as you tend to have when you're travelling, and I will not pause over lots of them, but it isn't just a McKinsey report. there's lots and lots and lots of research over the last 20 years to say the only key difference is that classroom teacher, which is the majority of people out there in this audience. What's become interesting is that various governments and various systems have begun to think, what do we do about our best teachers? So, if you look at policies across the world, you'll find a lot of things in common about the attitude towards the best teachers. Okay? So, most systems, Beaconhouse being one, are saying, how do we know who our best teachers are, and how do we make them know that they're recognised and that we can help them be influential? However, all the systems are a little bit different. So if there's going to be a system in Pakistan or in Beaconhouse or in a neighbouring country, it will not be the same as the one in the US or the UK. It will belong to you. You will design it to fit your context. So, for example, in Australia and England, head teachers have a lot of say over who's identified as the best teacher. In the USA and Scotland, it's a more standard-based idea with an independent agency that decides who can become an identified good teacher. So quite clear differences around the world. We've just done a bit of research. In England, we've had something called the Advanced Skills Teacher for 10 years, maybe 11 now. And what's really striking about it is that it's about 1 in 100 teachers. Not a lot of teachers, but they have a very important job to do, which is helping other teachers improve. And we wanted to look at how they felt about having been in post for 10 years. The first thing we had to talk to them about was the fact that actually becoming identified as a very good teacher sounds fine. It sounds great. But actually, sometimes other teachers are less comfortable when one teacher is pointed out as very good. So in England, the Advanced Skills Teacher had quite unpopular when it came in. Okay? People were not necessarily comfortable with the idea that some